now they've acquired this nickname, the Squad.
Yeah, AKA the Squad. Back in the news. 4 progressive congresswomen known as the Squad.
So we have heard a lot about this squad recently in the news, not just by the media, but also by the politicians. So what I want to do in this video is look at who they are individually, some of the things they have said and done, and just talk about that. But before we look at that, I also want to talk about the Justice Democrats, who is responsible for all of them. So all 4 of these individuals were elected because of this organization called Justice Democrats. Now they are an organization that was founded in 2016, and their basic goal is to change the Democratic Party from the inside out. They do that by finding members who they view as more progressive and then helping them and promoting them to get elected. I would argue that instead of using the term progressive, they actually choose individuals who are more extreme or more far left. So if you ever wondered who to thank for giving us AOC, it is them, Justice Democrats. Now, to show that they do choose individuals who are extreme, I want to show you some of the things that they themselves support. So this is all from their website, the Justice Democrats website, on the issues that they support. So here they are. The Green New Deal, which I'll talk about in a little bit, it's completely ridiculous. They want a federal jobs guarantee, so the federal government must guarantee everyone a job if they want it. Medicare for all, free public colleges, defend and expand Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, expanding those 3 programs is problematic because they already account for 66% of our total federal spending. And we are $20 trillion in debt. So rather than expanding those things, we should find a way to cut spending pretty much everywhere. And yes, that probably includes military as well. Fight for racial justice, which sounds okay on its face, but then it includes things like reparations for slavery, which I don't agree with. And then protecting women's rights, which again sounds okay, but it includes abortion and repealing the Hyde Amendment, which I did a video about, but that basically means they want the federal government to pay for abortions. So these are fairly extreme policies, not just according to me, but according to a lot of Americans. So these are individuals, all 4 of these members of the squad are Justice Democrats. Now we're going to start with AOC, because she is the most well-known and as a result, the least liked. Now, she is mostly known because of the Green New Deal, and she basically proposed this in response to what she viewed as the world was going to end. But don't take my word for it, here's what she said. That wasn't a Michael Scott joke, by the way. It just happy coincidence.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is, your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And like, this is the war. This is our World War II.
So the world is not going to end in 12 years. I think we all know that. She said a little bit later when she got pushback that she was joking. That didn't really sound like a joke, but whatever. So she put out the Green New Deal. First and foremost, there was a fact sheet that was put out. The fact sheet helps us understand what the Green New Deal was actually about. And it was not about climate change. It was about changing the economy. So here are bullet points. Again, this is taken directly from the fact sheet. And out of these bullet points, only 2 of them even have to deal with climate change. The one that I want to highlight that does not is economic security for all who are unable or unwilling to work. Now this phrase saw its way through media quite a lot, and that's understandable because economic security for those who are unwilling to work, what that basically means is that taxpayers, people who want to be taxpayers, are going to pay for the salary of individuals who choose to not work. And that makes no sense. I should not have to pay for my neighbor if my neighbor chooses to just not work, even though they completely could. So this shows that the Green New Deal was not actually about climate change. It was about what they viewed as social justice and changing the economy. But again, don't take my word for it. Let's just see what her chief of staff said about the Green New Deal. He said, and I quote, "Do you guys think of it as a climate thing? Because we really thought of it as a how do you change the entire economy thing." So here we have her chief of staff, Chakrabarty, specifically say the Green New Deal wasn't really about climate change to them. It was about changing the entire economy, which we already saw in the fact sheet. Now, if we go and we look at the actual Green New Deal resolution that she put out, again, there are a lot of instances that talk about social justice and things that have nothing to do with climate change whatsoever, which just cements the fact it's not really about climate change. But then the things that do talk about climate change are quite ridiculous. This, in my mind, is the most ridiculous, where it says upgrading all existing buildings in the United States. So the point here is that she wants to upgrade all buildings to become more eco-friendly, but that is quite ridiculous. Upgrading all existing buildings in 12 years in the United States, that is not economically feasible and it's probably not even possible anyway. which is why the Green New Deal resolution had a price tag of somewhere between 70 to 90 trillion dollars over the next 10 years. That's a lot of money. Now, because of how ridiculous all of this was, it did not pass, obviously. So the Green New Deal resolution came up to a vote in the Senate, and no one, I repeat, no one voted for it, which generally you think would mean that it's not a very good proposal. But AOC here says that the reason no one voted for it was because she told them not to do it. And to me, this once more cements the fact that it wasn't even about climate change, because AOC said that the world was going to end in 12 years. If you really think the world is going to end in 12 years, if you think your proposal can stop or at least limit when the world will end, why would you tell people to not vote for it? Even if it was a political ploy and the Republicans were just making fun of you, shouldn't you at least try to save the world? It doesn't make any sense. So again, the Green New Deal was pretty much a complete failure. It had nothing to do with climate change. It had everything to do with just proposing progressive policies that they liked. Now, Nancy Pelosi has been criticizing the squad on and off for basically since they've been elected, which has only been 6 months. Can you believe that? Very long 6 months. But AOC got tired of it. And so she said in regards to Nancy Pelosi, the persistent singling out, it got to a point where it was just outright disrespectful. And I can understand that. But then she says, the explicit singling out of newly elected women of color. Now, Nancy Pelosi didn't mention race. That was AOC. So what AOC is doing here is saying that Nancy Pelosi keeps criticizing us women of color. That is a low-key way of calling someone a racist. Now, I'm only a white guy, so maybe I don't know what's going on here, but to me, that sounds like you're implying something. Now, AOC has said, no, I wasn't calling her a racist, but then why would you have to bring up the fact that you are women of color? That does not in any way mean that the criticisms were not valid. It shouldn't change how someone criticizes you as long as they're not criticizing you because of your color. Now, she continued to talk about the criticism that she's receiving, and this is what she said.
It's singling out 4 individuals. And knowing the media environment that we're operating in, knowing the amount of death threats that we get, knowing the amount of concentration of attention, I think it's just worth asking why.
So not only can you not criticize the squad because they are women of color, but they are also receiving death threats, so that means that you should not criticize them as well. Now, obviously, death threats are not acceptable ever, but just because you receive a death threat does not then mean that you are somehow above criticism. If that were the case, the squad, AOC particularly, better stop criticizing Trump, because I am sure he gets way more death threats than AOC does. So playing by her own rules, if you can't criticize someone because they are receiving death threats, she better stop talking about Trump. But we all know that's not going to happen. Now, the second member, who is probably the most well-known, is Ihlan Ohmar. So I just want to start with a clip of something that she said that received quite a lot of pushback.
Was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
Now, just a point of factual accuracy, CARE was not in fact founded after 9/11 like she claims. It was founded in 1994. Now, this is just a little bit of a nitpick, but I think it's important. Because if you're going to go talk at an organization and you're going to talk about their founding, you should probably know when it was founded. Like, what sort of preparation went into this that she didn't look this up? Did she just think it was the case and went with it? Doesn't even make any sense. But obviously, the more important part is what she said later. Referring to 9/11, she said, and I quote, "Some people did something." That is a very, very bad way to talk about the worst terror attack in American history, which was responsible for thousands of deaths. There's just no way to get around it. You should not talk like that. And I want to kind of turn the tables a little bit. Let's think about the Parkland shooting. If President Trump had said, in regards to the Parkland shooting, some person with a gun did something and now they want to take away all your guns, the left and the media would go absolutely insane. And that's because you shouldn't downplay a tragedy by using such weird language. She did it, and there were some on the left who, yes, criticized her, but it wasn't nearly as much as it would have been if Trump had downplayed, like I said, Parkland. So here, we're not off to a good start, Omar. She's also been criticized for being lenient on terrorists, one in particular. So there was this individual, I'm not going to try and say his name because I would just kill it. Let's just call him Daoud. I still probably destroyed it, but whatever. So he was found guilty of 3 accounts. He was basically trying to join ISIS, and in doing so, there were murder plots that he was a part of, and a whole bunch of really bad things. But he was going to be a terrorist and join ISIS. We can all recognize that he's probably not a very good guy. So this happened in Minnesota before Ihlan Ohmar was in Congress. And so she wrote a letter essentially asking for a more lenient sentence on this individual. And here are the reasons that she gave. So we look here. She says, a long-term prison sentence for one who chose violence to combat direct marginalization is a statement that our justice system misunderstands the guilty. So he only wanted to join ISIS and become a terrorist because he had been marginalized in the United States. It's not really his fault that he wanted to join ISIS and kill people. It's because people in Minnesota were too mean to him. And look, I don't know what happened to that guy's life. Maybe he did experience some bigotry. But even if that is the case, that in no way means that joining ISIS is okay. She continues a little bit later by saying that the desire to commit violence is not inherent to people. It is a consequence of systematic alienation. So again, he's only a violent person because he's been alienated his whole life because America is this racist place, apparently. Not a very good look for her. Now, she's also been accused of having said and done anti-Semitic things. So here are just a few examples really quick. So this was before she was a congresswoman. She said, Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. So this is a common anti-Semitic trope of Israel just controlling people and hypnotizing people, making them believe that they're the good guys. So not a very good look for her. And then talking about how some people get in trouble for criticizing Israel in anti-Semitic ways, specifically talking about things that Ihlan Ohmar and Rashida Tlaib have said. Ihlan Ohmar basically said that you're not allowed to criticize Israel because it's all about the Benjamins, baby. So here, she's essentially saying, again, using an anti-Semitic trope, that the Jews are controlling the world and controlling what people can say because of all of their money, which is a very common anti-Semitic trope. So these things are not very good. Now, in response to that, the House was going to put forth this resolution to condemn anti-Semitism. It wasn't going to mention her, so that kind of sucks because it was all about her, but at least it was going to talk about anti-Semitism and how it's not acceptable. But they decided to not even do that. They watered it down to the point where they were condemning basically all forms of hate speech. And condemning hate speech is fine, don't get me wrong. But if you have someone who says something blatantly anti-Semitic, and then you say, well, anti-Semitism is bad, but so is everything else. That's pretty much using whataboutism. And not only that, but the reason for this resolution, which was Ihlan Ohmar, she's not even mentioned in it. And that's completely ridiculous. Now let's compare this to what happened about a week ago when Trump sent out that tweet saying, go back to where you came from, or something like that to the squad. Now, not a fan of that tweet. I didn't really like it. But in response to that tweet, the House immediately writes up this resolution, as you can see, specifically condemning Trump and his racist comments. So Ihlan Ohmar says anti-Semitic things, and even those individuals on the left agree that it's anti-Semitic, such as Chelsea Clinton, and yet she is not even mentioned, and the resolution just condemns all forms of hate. But when Trump says something that they view as racist, they call him out specifically and what he said. So this just shows the horrendous double standard, that if you're a Democrat and the Democrats like you in a Democratic House, that you will not really be reprimanded. But if you're Trump, everything you say is wrong, so let's throw you under the bus anyway. And again, I didn't like that tweet. I didn't think it was a good tweet. But if you're going to condemn Trump for what he said and tweeted, you have to do the same on your side. You can't be this partisan. Now, there's also a fair amount of evidence to suggest that Ihlan Ohmar may have married her brother and committed immigration fraud, allowing him to come over here. I'm just going to throw that out there. There's a source down below if you want to look at it. I'm not saying it did happen, but there is some evidence to suggest it may be the case. And the problem with this is Trump mentioned it at one point when someone asked him about it, and the media went crazy saying, how dare you accuse her of doing this, when he had really just said, I don't know about it, but some people think it's the case. So it is a possibility. I don't really know. You can look it up if you want. Now we're going to look at Rashida Tlaib. And the clip that I have of her, I just kind of wanted to show because it's from 2016. It shows her at a Trump rally and how, I guess, upset she was about it. And this was before Trump was even elected. So here we go.
I will say the Bernie Sanders people. You guys are crazy!
You're an animal! Get a job!
Yeah, so it's not a very good look for her. Now, she has also said and done plenty of anti-Semitic things. I just want to throw one out here. Now, during the government shutdown, there was some talk about aiding Israel in some way. And Bernie Sanders was saying we shouldn't be doing this because we need to open the government first and help out America, which I can kind of understand. And then he says, why are we doing this? And Rashida Tlaib says they forgot what country they represent. So again, this is a common anti-Semitic trope about dual loyalty. That the Jews in America are really loyal to Israel, and if you're loyal to Israel, it's just because you're, being again, hypnotized, like Ihlan Ohmar said. So not a very good look, not a very good tweet. Now, she also recently came out in support of not a $15 an hour minimum wage, but a $20 an hour minimum wage. So the House passed a federal minimum wage guarantee of $15 an hour. And everyone on the left was happy because they got it done and something they've been pushing for a while. Now, she, however, was not happy with it. She said that $15 an hour is not enough, that we need to go to $20. And this just goes to show that even when they accomplish what they said they want to, they're going to keep pushing it and keep, I guess, pushing the envelope further and further. So why stop at 20? Let's just go to 30. That sounds great for everybody, right? Maybe even 50. $50 an hour sounds fantastic. Obviously, economically, it would not work. And we're already seeing, such as Bernie Sanders' campaign, that he's cutting staffing hours to make this $15 minimum wage. So economically, they don't really know what they're talking about. It just sounds good. And now the last person we're going to talk about is Ayanna Pressley. Now she is by far the least well known, and as a result, she's actually the most liked. Because the more you know about these individuals, the less you like them, which is generally true for all politicians, don't get me wrong. But here we have what she said recently that hasn't really been making the rounds as much as it should.
Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up. Because we need you to represent that voice.
So just to re-emphasize what she said and reread a small section of it, quote, "We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice," unquote. So according to Ayanna Pressley, if you do not support the groupthink of the group that you're a part of, for example, African Americans, then you don't really belong in that group and they don't need you to help them out. So this is basically saying that if you as an African American do not support the Democrats, then what are you even doing, and we don't need you here anyway. And that seems to me like a fairly racist thing to say. And she talks about it with Muslims and queers as well. And it didn't really get any traction, surprisingly. It's not a good thing to say. And again, if a Republican had said that, they probably would have been kicked out of office by now or censured or something. But she said it, and everyone's fine with it. It's probably just because she's a Democrat and she is also a woman of color, but that's still not acceptable. And again, this doesn't really sound that good. It sounds to me like it's a racist comment. But we haven't really heard much about it unless you are in conservative circles, which means it just really hasn't taken off. And that just goes to show you that, again, the media will support the Democrats and kind of sweep under the rug what they do, but if it's something that Trump says or a Republican, they want to be announced from the rooftops. Now, most people think there are only 4 members of the squad, and that used to be true, but there is now one secret member of the squad. So this is Bill Pascrell. Now, an article was written by The Onion, and it took this picture and it said that Bill was asking Omar if he could join the squad. And obviously The Onion is satire, so that didn't really happen. But in response to that, he tweeted this article to AOC, who then said, quote, "You're in," at Bill Pascrell. So what that means is he is now a member of the squad. I think it's official because AOC is the leader and she let him in. So the squad is no longer just 4 congresswomen of color. It is now 5 Congress people. Trying to stay gender neutral here. I don't want to get in trouble for this. So now when Nancy Pelosi criticizes the squad, AOC can no longer say that she's just singling out women of color because now we have Bill in there. So I think that kind of made it a little bit worse for AOC. But hey, that is the squad. So that's all that I had today. I hope it was entertaining, but I also hope that it was informational, that you learned something from it. As always, the sources I use are down below, so go ahead and check them out. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. I really appreciate it. Like, and let me know what you think about this video down below. Be sure to watch one of my other videos before you take off. And as always, thank you for watching. See you next time.